Hello there, welcome to the Female Guides Requested podcast. I'm your host Tintin from Las Vegas. Our guest in this episode is Aimee Barnes. Aimee Barnes started guiding in 1985 and is a legend in the guiding world. Her love towards guiding and her dedication to hard work is infectious. I was so inspired during our conversation that I felt compelled to reflect on my own guiding to recalibrate my career path. She is also an advocate of education and mentorship. She has run the all-women guide Protrack in City of Rocks for about 10 years. Both newer and seasoned female guides have benefited and learned much from the Protrack and built and grown their own network of support. Aimee is a walking history book. It was so fun listening to all the stories, from toughing out storms waiting for her dad when she was a little girl, accidental participation in the Snowbird World Cup competition, to multi-decade-long engagement with the outdoor and guiding industry. Now, let's take this wild ride together with Aimee. This thing is kind of new to me, so I'm trying to be a very good interviewer, but I probably still later I'll look through my notes, so maybe there will be some like awkward pause and stuff. So just bear with me since I'm not really new, but I really want to do this.
I'm new and I really it's really not my thing to be very public about much of anything. So
Oh,
this is
okay.
kind of a big deal for me. I'm definitely someone who flies a little under the radar and kind of lead a private life. So it's a big deal for me to actually sit down and talk. But
Oh, thank
I
you so
really,
much for doing this.
but I admire that you're taking steps to just even gather history about women and guiding and, where our career paths have taken us or are taking us or can take us. So I admire that. And I am also doing a history talk with a woman in Salt Lake City in a couple weeks about just kind of my history of climbing, which I would never really do that. I mean, I've never been anybody who's pursued sponsorship or my photo in a magazine or anything like that. That's never been on my list. So, but I'm just anxious or I'm excited to speak with her just because it is just an oral history. And I think that
Definitely.
it's really a cool thing to be able um, to take part in. And I also feel like we have access to do that. We have a different means of recording.
Nice. And the reason I'm doing this myself is, well, so many people ask me, and then people want to be breaking into guiding, and they ask for advice. I was just like, well, I've been guiding, but I feel like I don't know what kind of advice I can provide them. I was just like, I'm gonna ask for people who've been in this industry longer or fellow female guides to gather more advice so people can feel like more comfortable. And I actually interviewed locally with Tracy, and she mentioned that you are a big role model for her. She said, "Well, it's not like Aimee does anything different than I expected, but just the way you present yourself and because everybody knows you've been in guiding for so long, and we consider you this badass female guide, and then but then on the very fundamental level, you are also share a lot of things with us, so make people feel very inspired."
Thank you.
And I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions because I'm also curious. It's like so hard for me to find because you start active guiding even before the so-called internet era, so it's a little bit hard to find information.
Well, I just have never been into being a part of the whole self promotion thing. I've just, I've always just worked. Like guiding is, at the end of the day, you're either athlete or you're a guide. And I'm a guide, and guiding is blue collar work. Like it's work. Like it's hard work, and you have to show up for it and you have to make it happen. And so for me, that's always been my interest, is the programs and the day out with a client, that end result of providing a great experience for people. So for me, I've always shied away from any kind of partnership or sponsorship, even though have very, very deep roots within the outdoor industry. And I have to say that guiding as a career has been very, it's been a double-edged sword. I mean, I started at college at Idaho State University, um, working for their outdoor program. The year I started college, they stopped their outdoor recreation program. But I had a boyfriend who climbed, who took me out climbing, and and I met Jeff and Kelly Rhodes at that point, who were big into Outward Bound. They worked for Sawtooth Mountain Guides. They worked for Kirk Bachman. I met Kirk at that time as well. And at Idaho State University, that's where we all kind of met. And I was able to get a work study job on teaching the climbing class, which, was about setting up top rope anchors at Ross Park, going on trips to the City of Rocks, going, to the Tetons for trips. And then we did an open climbing, which was a community thing on Wednesdays where you'd provide top roping ropes for the general public. And I really enjoyed sharing knowledge and just watching the psychology of climbing is far more important to me than the actual physical end of it, to actually watch someone transform in front of you mentally and physically, and watch them walk away with a little higher brow and a sense of pride that they actually accomplished something they didn't think they could do. So my roots start with, I worked retail within the outdoor industry. I started teaching climbing and climbing with a boyfriend in Pocatello, Idaho, and working for the outdoor program. And that really got me going for climbing. And then I did a lot of first ascents with my boyfriend at the City of Rocks. The City of Rocks is a unique climbing area. It doesn't have like a local climbing community. Its local climbing community was drawn from outdoor regions like Sun Valley, Haley, Boise, Jackson Hole, Salt Lake City, and Pocatello and Idaho Falls. And it really was an amazing time during the early 80s to be establishing new routes and hanging out with all of these people climbing from all these different areas. It really was a huge sense of a climbing community that those people are still my friends today. And so that's kind of how I really started climbing. But really my roots are with the outdoor industry, with working in retail. My home economics teacher in high school owned Rocky Mountain River Tours, and she was a great mentor and influence to me, Sheila Mills. And she hired me right out of high school to run their shuttles for them up on the Middle Fork and Maine Salmon. And I was quickly fired within 1 month after I jackknifed the trailer, and I lost my job. So I was like, well, okay, but we're still friends today, and she's still an incredible influence and female mentor. But it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm not down for the river business, even though I spend a ton of time on the water. But anyway, I guess getting back to climbing in the outdoor industry, I worked retail, and at the time, Black Diamond was moving. So I worked for Kirk in the 80s. I started working for Sawtooth Mountain Guides in 85. And I really had nothing more than a water safety instructor credential as a climber. And then what I had learned through Kirk and Chris and Jeff and Kelly. And Kirk was always, he had a bunch of work going on at the city. He had just gotten his permits there. I'd done some climbing with him up in the Sawtooth. And he had work, and guides just weren't showing up. They had filming stuff to do, survival of the fittest was going on. And so I was just kind of showing up for guiding. And back then, I mean, you have to realize in 85, you weren't guiding over 5, 6, 5, 7 for people. People couldn't climb that hard, right? Like gyms didn't come into play until the 90s, right? The
Yes.
late 80s, early 90s, right? So now people train. Now
Yes.
you have a client that actually has purpose. And back then, it was just like, oh yeah, kind of this eccentric person who's going to hire a guide. And I knew the city very well. I knew how to work within my margins of safety. And I had great mentors, Jeff and Kelly and Chris Barnes and Kirk Bachman. They taught me the ropes as we know the ropes to be in 1985 to 1990, right? So I was working retail, working as a buyer. Black Diamond moved to Salt Lake City. They picked me up as a tech rep. So I would go out and do shoe demos, ski demos for them. We sold climbing gear in our store. So I was connected in that regard. And then I was offered an opportunity to move to Salt Lake and be the assistant manager at their flagship retail store. So I did it. And then from there, they hired me to run their pro purchase program. And so I developed their pro purchase program that's in play today back in the 90s.
Oh, thank you.
And so I kind of feel like I entered guiding in my whole career from the back door into the front door. Like I just didn't really know, like I'm like this small little girl in Idaho, right? And I just really didn't know, um, what was really out there and how the industry was going to blossom and grow. Um,
And
but I
back then,
learned that working at Black Diamond,
I'm just saying that. And
yes.
back then, is that pretty hard
Oh,
to guide full time as make your living? So you kind of have to do different jobs like retail and
yeah,
then.
well, yeah, there wasn't just that much guiding, but when the guiding came up, because I had this retail background, because I had this guiding potential, I was moving into the guiding world and I'm running this pro purchase program. Black Diamond was very flexible with me on taking any guiding jobs that I could. And at that time I was still working for Kirk, and Kirk had the knack of like landing really large corporate hedge fund groups that we would go out and guide, and I could like put it on my schedule. I could tack it on with doing a shoe demo somewhere. So, I mean, all of that was just really like an amazing time. It was just no internet, no Instagram, no Facebook. You were just out having fun and meeting people and shaking hands and having conversations. And it was all really very one to one and very personal and very enlightening. So I, uh, I took this job as the pro purchase coordinator, and as I did that, I met pros. I met the
Oh,
guiding
yes.
industry. I met the people who were out there, and I worked for Kirk and Sawtooth Mountain Guides, and then Eric Leidecker came on board, and ended up buying the company, and he's still an owner. I still have a great relationship with all of those folks. And at that time, I worked for Mariah Cranner, who was, I have to say, one of my greatest mentors and influences. She just recently passed away.
Oh,
But Mariah is someone who all of us as women in the outdoor industry, whether we're in retail, whether we are climbers, we all stand on Mariah's shoulders. And she had impeccable taste. She knew how high to set the bar, and she always set the bar high. She always let you know that you could achieve whatever goals you wanted. And to be around her was a trajectory changing aspect of my life. I knew then and there I could absolutely go in and do whatever I wanted, where I wanted. And it didn't really matter. Like, I didn't really care what others thought. Like,
So
she
what?
taught me that.
So what was her role back then? What did she do as a job?
She, she was part of Patagonia Equipment.
Okay.
She took a job that was not a job. I mean, she was brilliant. So she just did whatever she could do to help Avon. She worked with the catalog. And then when Patagonia broke up and then the clothing company went their separate way, the hard goods company was bought out
Yeah.
by the employees, led by Mariah and Peter Metcalf. And
Right.
so Mariah was the spearhead along with Peter on that. And then it became an employee owned company. And in doing so, you know, I would go to trade shows as a buyer and I would see Mariah and I would just be like, oh my gosh, if I could just get within her bullseye, I know that I will see this world the way I need to be seeing it. And sure enough, getting a job with Black Diamond and being able to work under her tutelage and the creative and the creative and talent end of everyone who worked at Black Diamond back then. I think there was maybe 130 employees at the time. Um, that was just a life changing event for me. And so I was able to work for them, run this pro purchase program. And then I had the opportunity of meeting Jim Conway, who's a pro skier and guide and avalanche forecaster out of Salt Lake City. And Conway is a good friend and he's hilarious. He would take me to lunch once a week and bring a 3-ring binder of all of his ski magazine covers to reinforce to me that he was a pro and how, like, he's the person who should be getting this gear. And, we really hadn't developed a formal sponsorship program or anything like that. But Conway and I would go climbing and, skiing and stuff. And then he introduced me to his boss, Doug and Emily Coombs. And Emily and Doug came to Black Diamond and I mean, everybody is all Doug Coombs, Doug Coombs, Doug Coombs. And I was just like, oh my God, Emily Gladstone, you are the most amazing woman I've ever met. So meeting Emily Coombs was another life-changing event for me. And we all went skiing and then we all went climbing. And I was kind of like running at the end of the treadmill at Black Diamond and kind of looking to get out of Salt Lake City. It didn't have enough soul for me because I grew up in the outdoors in a small town. So living in Salt Lake wasn't that great for me. And they asked me to be their business manager at Valdez Heli up in Valdez, Alaska. And so I was like, this is it. This is how I can guide in the summer, be a guide, and I can go get my foot in the door with ski guiding, which I grew up on skis. I
Oh,
started
okay.
skiing at the age of 5. So I was like, and skiing is a huge love and passion of mine. And so I was like, oh, I'm doing it. Like,
I never
I'm,
knew that you guys on skis.
yeah. And so I cut the ripcord with Black Diamond, but still have a great relationship with everyone there and made incredible friends who still carry me through my day to day world today. And I went to Alaska and I got to Alaska. And here's where I'm saying that I went through the back door before coming out the front door. I start working in the office, checking people in, and every single person is showing up in a marmot jacket and K2 skis. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is what pro programs and sponsorships are all about. I'm finally seeing this.
Right.
But it's only taken me 7 years of working this pro program to actually have it hit me in the face. And then that's when I just realized, like, if you want to guide and you want to be out there in this world, there are people who want your services. And I needed to figure out how I was going to make all of that happen. And so I worked for Doug and Emily up until when they sold their business. And I have to say, best job in the whole world, being in charge of 3 helicopters. Nobody got on a helicopter without going through me. Every day at 3 o'clock, I got in the jump seat. I got to ski terrain every day. Funnest group of people I've ever worked with. And we just laughed. And I didn't realize how intrepid everyone was and what was actually happening at the time until later on when I had time to reflect on stuff after I had left working in Alaska.
So how long
So
have
after
you worked there? How long have you
I
worked in
worked
Alaska?
there, worked there from 95 to 2001.
So 6 years.
6 years, yeah. 6 seasons. And then I was guiding. I was like, okay, I can guide all summer now. And so I was guiding all summer. And then towards the end, around 2000, I decided I was going to really be in Jackson. I was going to be in Victor, Idaho area.
Because
I was
it also
moving
has
out of,
skiing, right? Move to
yeah,
Jackson. Yeah.
Teton. That's the Idaho side of the Tetons
Right.
is Victor and Driggs. And so I ended up moving over there to be closer um, to just back home and being back outside, not living in a city. And so I went there, and I uh, I was still working for Sawtooth Mountain Guides, but I was also trying to get to Vegas to guide as well. And
Okay.
so I started working for Jackson Hole Mountain Guides. And in like the mid 90s, I started running these women's climbing programs at the City of Rocks called City Girls, which was named after a climb I established. One of my clients I met heli skiing. She said, hey, well, I want to bring my friends. And so I also had some friends over at the Elephant's Perch, Nappy Neiman, who was always gathering clients for me and sending them my way at the city during the summer timeline where I was working in Valdez in the winter and then guiding in the summer, basically at the city. And I had people who were bringing me clients, so I was able to you know have a client base and keep
I
active
see.
out there.
And then the city
And so I
girls
start
just for women.
yeah, it was just for women. And we had a yoga instructor. We fired the yoga instructor because she didn't understand that she couldn't do yoga all day. And all the women were like, we don't want her. We just want to climb. So we got rid of yoga really early on in the game. But we had such a good time. And I fostered about, I'd say 15 female clients out of that. And then from there, I ended up with a really hardcore group of probably, I say 8 women that
Nice.
from the late 90s to even, well, I have still a group of them coming out to meet me on St. Patrick's Day this year.
Wow.
But from there, I fostered a group of women that I had between 6 and 8 trips a year out of some combination of those women, whether they were solo, whether they would come. And then I created my relationship with Mark Lamage at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides in the Red Rock. And I would probably do 3 trips in the spring and 3 trips in the autumn with some form of that group, and then pick up any extra guiding Mark had in between while I was there for my 2 or 3 weeks. So that was kind of how that was working. And I was rolling out of Jackson. So I picked up like working in the Red Rock. And I really grew up climbing at the Red Rock. I mean, I started climbing in the Red Rock in the 80s when we could go out and camp at Black Velvet
Yeah,
Canyon.
I heard about those
There was
days.
no gate. right? No gate
Yeah.
on the loop. You would go camp at Oak Creek. And I mean, the only thing you had to get through was all the graffiti and broken glass. And you're like, oh, I got past all the graffiti and broken glass. So now we can really feel safe and climb out here, you know? And so, I mean, I had a really strong resume from the Red Rock. And Mark was a great mentor, and it was awesome working under his tutelage out there. And so that kind of developed into like, I actually had a client base at that time.
Nice.
And then I left Valdez and went to work at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort as the kid photographer for the kid ranch so I could get a
Photographer,
pass.
you.
And my boyfriend, yes, so I had the best job. Everybody wants to take like action shots of everyone on the hill, and you're out on the hill all day taking shots. I would go in, take the little kids' picture first thing in the morning, run down, pull out the film, throw it in the thing for the developer, go out and ski, come back in, circle all the pictures I wanted, have them printed, go up to the kids' ranch, set up my little board, and then I was just like, it was hilarious. I was like a carnival worker. I would like then sell all the photographs because nobody brought their camera for their kids' first day of ski. So I would sell the photographs.
It's so
And
different
then
nowadays.
it got me out, right? And then I would go out and ski with my boyfriend all the time. And he was a backcountry ski guide. They had just opened the gates there. And so I would go and ski with him, and his clients would welcome me to come out with them. And so I was getting like this firsthand job training on skiing the backcountry at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And he had clients that would book him for a month. And one client was particularly excited to have me ski along with his daughter and then my soon to be husband as the guide. So that's how I really started ski guiding. And I applied for the job of being a ski instructor, or not a ski instructor, I'm sorry, a ski guide at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort for probably 5 years. And then they hired me. And so that threw me into the realm of being a mechanized backcountry ski guide. And I did that for 16 years. I just retired a few years ago from that position, which was a coveted position. Like, I have to say, working for Valdez Heli Ski Guides was great, but getting on the first tram every day at Teton Village was epic. And, you know, I know that in your notes, I really didn't have any female ski clients at all. I
Not at
had
all.
really male clients.
Wow. So what's their
Not
reaction?
really. I worked a women's camp. I worked a female women's camp, and it was a considerable day in the backcountry. And I was working with women at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort who were showing up in the backcountry with their leopard pants and fur coats and you know, and I mean, they're all a bunch of high rollers and whatever. I'm a guide, right? Like, my job is to get you through this next run without incident and you're going to enjoy yourself. Hopefully you're going to enjoy yourself. Well, they didn't like that I was just throwing down rules because of the ski conditions. And so they have a big opera party after the women's ski camps, and they used to fill out handwritten forms. And I watched them. The one woman in the leopard pants hated me. And I watched them all fill out a negative report on me. Like, they hated me. They
Oh,
thought I was too
bossy.
controlling. And I mean, it was a horrible critique. And it comes back to you, right? I mean, it's a learning experience. Like, I can't say that I didn't walk away from that experience not having more knowledge and learning. So they're like, well, you're not doing women's camps. And I was like, fine. I don't want to work for women like that. Like, I know there are more
Right.
wholesome people out there who I would prefer to work for. So I just started gathering up clients. And I mean, in January, they call it Manuary in Jackson because all the men come out with their buddies to,
Okay.
have a 5-day guy, ski with your buddies. And I just started picking up clients, and I never had room in my schedule to ever work another women's camp. And I never did again for skiing.
I
And
see.
I really had I have to say, like, I love skiing. I love taking people out into the backcountry. And I have to say, those were really great years. And I learned a lot from those men, and I learned a lot from those women. And then I just was realizing, like, I'm actually doing this year round. I'm actually a ski guide. I'm actually a climbing guide. And then when I started working for Jackson Hole Mountain Guides, I was living in the area, and they brought me on as a Teton guide. And that's when I was like, I'm getting all three disciplines here. And
Yeah.
this is awesome.
So then
And
you
it's
stop
just,
guiding full time, right?
I guiding full time.
So
Yeah. In
when
about
was that?
2001.
2001. Okay.
Yeah. 2001. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was amazing. It's like, and it all kind of just transformed, but it transformed out of the cradle of really being involved in the outdoor industry and spinning a lot of plates
Right.
to get to that,
I mean, it certainly is
to get to
different
that.
than the past nowadays. Like right now, it's just like, okay, this is AMGA, so you take courses and you learn how to guide, and then
Yeah.
you got a job. And back then, because
Yeah.
you start guiding in 1985 on my notes, and I
Yep.
researched about that. Um, so I remember AMGA was established in 1979. So it was
Yep.
basically,
It was fairly new.
yeah,
And so my first encounters with the AMGA was when I was running the pro program at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides, or at Black Diamond, right? So um, of course we open up pro deals for AMGA members. So we had to establish, like, what is a pro? And so in doing so, that was my interaction with them. Plus Kirk Bachman was involved with the AMGA, but there wasn't really like any fostering. Like, I was really like, I don't feel like anybody really saw me as a guide. I mean, I was out there doing the work,
yes,
but they were just like, everybody was really trying to figure out how they were going to get themselves into this program and how they were going to make this work. And I mean, I hosted a meeting at Black Diamond. There was the AMGA, and then there was this um, counter group called the Guides Association, which was led by Paul Horton. And they came and actually held a meeting because they were trying to break down the AMGA to see what the legitimacy was and stuff. And like, they came, and like Ken Jern was there, Tom Hargis was there. I can't even remember everyone who was there, but a bunch of people who are affiliated with the AMGA today actually were looking at forming a whole nother group back then. And
oh,
I hosted that meeting in the boardroom at BD. And that group has hence folded because they decided that they needed the strength of one group, and they all
yes,
decided to support the AMGA. And I've always supported education. I just never had, I mean, I would go to guide training with Sawtooth Mountain Guides or guide training with the mountain guides. And sure, you're gathering information and sharing information. It's just like getting your first aid every 2 years. Like, you need that information. You need knowledge to be a better guide.
definitely.
But I never had anybody for a long time say, wow, you're a ski guide. Wow, you're an alpine guide and you're a rock guide. Maybe you should be going for your pin. No one ever said that to me, ever. So I just kept working. And then I just realized I really need to get in this program, or I'm not going to be taken seriously as a guide. And I
Right.
believe in the educational format of the AMGA. I do believe that it is a European program that we're trying to crunch into an American permit system, which
Yes,
the AMGA has their challenges with, and they're working on that. But I do believe in knowledge. I do believe in sharing knowledge. And so I went through the rock program,
oh,
and I was
uh,
old.
so you were
Yeah,
now
there was
grandfather
no
and you
way,
went,
no way. there was no way I was going to do that. There was so much controversy. There were people who were the most talented guides I knew who were getting shut down by the system. And there was so much ill will. I was like, I'm going to just put my head down and work. And I just put my head down and I worked. And then I signed up for the rock program in Joshua Tree and Hargis and Night Ever and Fox. He had Fox Mountaineering. I can't remember his first name. He was one of our instructors.
Adam.
And Casey Baum. Adam Fox, right. And
yes.
Then Casey Baum was also an instructor. And I went to that and I was like, whoa, okay. I can move through this program quickly. Like I saw people coming in from gyms, from outdoor programs, people who had no experience guiding.
Yeah, you have already a lot of experience.
Well, and just an experience, like just to fill out my resume, I was able to like fill out my resume with all the climb requirements over just the last 9 months.
Yeah.
And so boom, you're in. And then I was realizing like, oh, okay, I can get through this. But it wasn't without, having a bit of imposter syndrome. Here I am, old enough to be everyone's mom. I'm more on the level of all my instructors as far as like that. They're my generation.
Can I ask you how old you were then?
Let's see. So I'm 60 now, and yeah, how old was I? I was in my 40s.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, 40 still young. But probably
well, it's young. I mean, and so is 60, but you're just like,
right.
Wow. I mean, I went to high school with women who have kids your age. I'm child free, but I was just like, oh, there is like a real generational disconnect here. And I really never had like, oh, like I can just go train with you, or, I didn't have that generational relationship.
I see. It's kind of interesting for me to hear that you have the imposter syndrome, because you actually have more experience than them. You have guided and you have climbed probably longer than those participants.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I've climbed since 1979.
Yeah.
It's the first time I started climbing.
So you should be like feeling more than competent than those people.
Well, but you're being judged, right?
Yes.
So all of that experience behind you, they're looking at that going, well, she's supposed to have all this experience. I'm going to like nitpick, and like having someone who has no experience argue with you that a PAS is the same as a daisy chain. And you're just like, okay, I need to walk away from this, because I actually have a lot of years working at a climbing company where we actually tested breaking strengths. Yes. And, like I actually have a background there. But so anyway, so I went through the rock course and I punched that thing out in just over 2 years and got my rock guide. And really, I'm kind of like in this zone where I can still work and not, I don't know. I just never got the encouragement to get a pin. It's a lot of money. I had a clientele. Yes. Mm-hmm. I had a job. I've already had connections and jobs with, one of the oldest guide services in America. And so I was like, I'm going to just keep on this roll. And, I like to make money. I mean, I own a house. I bought a house at a very young age. And so I have a house payment to make, right? Like I have to fill my house with renters while I'm out living in my van. And then I got to kick them all out because I'm moving in for the winter so I could ski. And so here I am today in my 60s. I don't climb 513. I'm a strong climber, but I also have a place to live. I mean, it's not come without calculated risks and a big retirement 401k happening for me. The only thing I have is everything I've made and invested. And I haven't been out just living in my van thinking, oh, I'm going to just, retire and everything's going to be fine. It's like, I've made some investments.
Right.
And I'm a little blown away where I'm at right now. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing all right. But yeah, so I guess getting back to like working for the mountain guides and being a Teton guide and going through the AMGA. And I mean, I really believe in the AMGA. I believe that we need an educational format. I think we need consistency throughout guides and guiding and guide services. I remember when we really started teaching a figure eight on a follow through, and you're not going to teach them your bowline that you're sport climbing on. And to have someone say to me, "Oh, I just was climbing with Howie Schwartz, and this is the same knot he taught me," and I was like, "All right, that's consistency. That's how we're going to make climbing safer, and we're going to have continuity as guide services." And that was a big aha moment for me. So I think it's wonderful how industry partners have come on board with the AMGA to give scholarships. I find it, really remarkable how the AMGA is able to pivot and help with, you know, programs for, specific programs for women, specific programs for people who are unrepresented in the outdoor industry. I think they're on the right track. They're getting their scope of practice together. I guess my only thing is I just wish I would have had someone who was like, yeah, you're someone who could really be a candidate for a pin. And I just never had that. So I just put my head down and worked and basically went through the rock program. And it is a regret of mine. Like as a 35-year guide,
Yeah.
it's a regret that I don't have a pen.
I mean, you are just in this time that when they just established. So for you, you almost don't need a pen to have work, but it's just kind of like, oh, I could
But it's
have.
just to be, yeah, it's an acknowledgement of your peers
Right.
and your contemporaries. And I have to say, like Rob Hess,
Rob House, yes.
who he's a great friend, and he is the one who really was like, yeah, let's get this going. Let's get you on the track with your rock guide. Um, and I am like this incredibly independent, willful, hard-headed person that everybody kind of just looks at me and goes, "Oh, she's got it all under control." Where
Mm.
maybe I don't.
Solomon,
maybe you could have a check-in.
yeah,
Maybe maybe a fellow female AMGA member could check in with you. But I guess that being said, working for the mountain guides, then I actually sold my place in Idaho. My husband had a place in Jackson Hole, and then I sold my place in Idaho. And when I sold my place in Idaho, I came down and bought a house in Moab.
right.
And when I bought a house in Moab, Jim Ratz from Jackson Hole Mountain Guides approached me and he said, "Hey, we've had permits here forever. Some of them have kind of fallen by the wayside. Rob Hess's late wife, Catherine Hess, also bought a place in Castle Valley." And he's like, "Hey, man, we want to fire up the Moab branch again.
Right.
And are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." And, I got to work with Catherine. So Catherine really worked on all the canyoneering stuff. I worked on all the climbing stuff. We put a rebirth into all of our permits, and we fired up the Moab branch in 2002. And so it put me in Jackson in the winter, Jackson in the summer, and Moab during the spring and fall. And I mean, it was really such an incredible time.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what a great schedule.
can I backtrack a little bit? So I
Mm-hmm.
have two questions here.
Mm-hmm.
That so you mentioned that you have been guided for 35 and keep counting forward. And you also mentioned that guiding is this blue collar job, means that you
Yeah,
kind of have to work really hard. And
it's
so
physical.
what's your secret? So okay, so can you tell me what do you find that the challenging part of guiding, so you call it blue collar job. And then second, I'm curious because a lot of time some people would ask me, it's like, oh, they just want part-time guiding, or they think that guiding is more like a transitional job. And what's your secret to keep guiding to have such a longevity?
I mean, I guess it can be a transitional job. For me, it never was. I really love being outside. Um, I think ski guiding in particular is not transitional. I think you need to be out and you have to have your head in the snow every day. And it takes a lot of research if you're moving around to different areas to know snowpack, know terrain, and that's not part time. It might be part time while you're in the field, but there's definitely work and research that needs to take place in the background. If for ski guiding, it's the same for alpine climbing. Um, you know, you definitely want to go in and know know your roots. I mean, that's the thing I can say about the AMGA is it makes you become a more elegant guide, right? So it helps you with your prepping for your day. It helps you know what ropes you need for the job. You want to be the most elegant you can with all of your protection in your gear and carrying only what you need. So, so in that respect, I mean, I guess you can just shoot from the hip and do that. But for me, that kind of stuff takes planning. I mean, that's why we have guide notebooks and we keep track of what we're doing. Um, and for me, I was able to have, for longevity, I was able to actually have this admin portion of the job as I guided. And I was able to fall back on that in case there was an injury or something went down that I needed to have, more admin time and I couldn't be in the field. But that really didn't happen too much during my career, to say, through the bulk of my career. I really just had a ton of energy and I really have been very driven since I was a child to make things happen for myself. I have 7 sisters. I come from a family of 8 women. I'm seven out of 8. And I really didn't know that women had limits. I wasn't raised that way.
That was
And
also
so,
one of my other questions too. So now I know the answer because you are driven. You didn't get put on this whatever the social society impression of women supposed to be a certain way. Because originally I was wondering at your time era, you probably work with a lot of male colleagues. So
mhm.
sometimes I found that female feel like they need to pretend to be tough if they work in that environment. Does that
Yeah.
uh, did that happen to you, or you just
Um,
naturally born like tough?
I was kind of tough. Like I mean, I think I was born an imposter. Like I have I'm from this Catholic family that had the perfect rhythm method up till child number 5. And then there's like a 5-year break and there's me. And then there's 10 months and my little sister. So I booted my older sister out of being the baby sister. And I always felt like I was just kind of this imposter coming in on this family that was finished. And then it's like, oh, well, birth control's not out. It's 1962. We got a couple more coming in. So, and then my dad was dead set he was going to have a son and he didn't. And I have to say that I was really taken under my dad's wing as father's daughter. My middle name's John. I went by the name of John until I was in junior high school. And all I did was hunt and fish and ski and get taken outdoors with my dad. And so, and then we skied as a family, which is amazing to think about all 10 of us out on the ski hill. Like,
Yes.
holy cow. But yeah, I mean, I was just, I just really feel like I have like kind of these blinders on that I shouldn't be able to do something. Like, I just have always felt like I was capable. I learned a lot as I progressed in my career, as I chased people like Doug Coombs or, you know, people, I realized that, wow, men's bodies are definitely different than women's, right? Like that stride is much faster and his gait is much bigger than mine. Um, so I learned like, okay, like you got to find your pace. And
Right.
so for me, I just found my pace and just kept moving forward, trying to guide as much as I could, learn as much as I could, go out and do whatever new routes I could so I could have, more climbs on my resume so I could have more work. And then we were developing this whole program here in Moab, and um, Jim Ratz, who was an owner of Jackson Hole Mountain Guides, who I talked to every day and really was someone who was fostering me in my career, was killed in a rappelling accident. And and when that happened, like the wheels kind of fell off the cart with the mountain guides. And there was just opportunities for me to pick up little pieces of work. And it all kind of went without saying, like, we were just all trying to like keep the company going. And so I was picking up a little more work and doing a few more things. And then the following year in March, Catherine was killed in a ski accident. And that was really just like so devastating. I mean, like I have a list, a Rolodex of dead friends. Like climbing and skiing are risky, but losing Jim and Catherine kind of changed just how Jackson Hole Mountain Guides was running and who was running it and who was stepping up. Like there was no there was no job description being put out on the AMGA website. This job needs to be filled. Like we all just kind of stepped up to the plate and took over. And I mean, we're really a family. Like Jackson Hole Mountain Guides truly was a family, and we're getting bigger, and that sense of family is getting a little bit lost, but not really. Um, so for me, I mean, I feel like I kind of had this private golden ticket on having opportunity and just knowing that that's opportunity and taking advantage of it. And knowing that the only way I'm going to have a retirement is by working hard and pigeonholing money and investing. And I've been able to do that. But like I said, I'm not a 513 climber.
Well, it's like not that important as a guy. It's not like 513 is
Well,
like
it's not that important as a person
no,
either.
not at
Like
all.
for
Yeah.
me, like climbing, like I don't climb. I'm definitely someone who I don't go out there and climb because I'm driven by my ghosts or skeletons in the closet. Like I go out and climb because I purely enjoy it. I purely enjoy
Right.
being outside. I purely enjoy skiing and being out in the like great way to get around the mountains in the winter is on skis. It's like, oh, this is amazing. So I mean, I ski and I climb for pure enjoyment. I love an elevated position, being up high. Like there's nothing better.
And
And
then
I
you
really
cert
love sharing knowledge,
yeah.
you know.
And you certainly treat it
Hmm?
like a real career because you were talking about, okay, I enjoy this line of work and then, but I still save, invest to plan for my, say, in case I retire, then I need some financial
Yeah,
independence. Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I think right now, a lot of people still don't think that guiding can be a true career. So that's kind of really inspiring you. It's just like, okay, this is my job, so I'm like invested, and then I will make it work. So, but I'm curious. A lot of people told me, well, including myself, that the balance of guiding and their personal, say, climbing and ski goals. I mean, so you enjoy because when you climb and ski with your clients, you're probably doing something different than you personal would choose
Totally.
to do.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
have you find the dilemma and like how do you cope with it?
Well, I think that, I think being able to set boundaries is really important because I know for me, if you have work coming, you don't want to, there's as much work as you want as a female guide out there. You just have to show up for the work and take the work. It's there. And so, but there's always that side of you where you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't take this job, am I going to get kicked lower down on the schedule or on the, on the scheduling list? Like, so there is like real desire to like not miss the work, take the work, but then you have to have balance. You have to have balance for physical health and for your mental health. And so the way I worked when I was ski guiding is, number one, I never did opera with clients. It's like I would never go out after skiing and have a beer to beg for your tip. It's like, all right, boys, I'm out of here. Like, I got to take this high trail to get to my locker and I'm done for the day. I'll see you tomorrow. And they're like, oh, you're not going to have a beer with us? It's like, you know what? I don't drink. So, no, I'm not. And then it's like they're forced to give you your tip then and there. And then you're out of there. And then you can go home and you can, go be mindless. You can go fuel your body. You can go hydrate. You can go sit in the hot tub. And then with climbing, it's not that cut and dry because we do a lot of trips where we are on with people 24/7, right? So you can't have that space away. So what I started doing is just like blanking out days where I don't work on my calendar. It's like, no, that's my birthday week. Sorry, I don't work that week. Um, I don't, so I would just block time out. And, you have to do that as well because you have to have time for your family. I mean, my husband was a level 4 PSI instructor. He is a ski guide. And then later he became a pilot, a bush pilot later in life. And so all of a sudden we're like, we have to make time for each other. And so that was really the foundation for setting those boundaries, is that you have to set your family time. And both of us had high risk jobs. And so it was, we could maybe not come back from a job to see each other, especially being a bush pilot. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to have to set boundaries. And I think it's really important to keep up on your nutrition. I think hydration is the most difficult thing to keep up with as a guide. And I think it's okay to like just work day trips if you can work day trips. And, you know, working with your co-guides, like in the Tetons, we work kind of in we work out of a hut. And so you have other guides there. I think it's really good to have good communication with your co-guides on who's going to hang at the hut and then who's going to go over and work on some climbing and who's going to, just go lay in their tent for a while. Like, you need to have time away from your clients. And it's hard to establish that. I think it's the hardest thing, you know.
Yeah,
I'm sure
especially
you have found that as well, right?
yeah. I mean, in the past, if I have to do like a big camp, then I have to camp with them. Then it's a little bit hard. Yeah, day
Well,
trip
and
is
who
a lot
wants to
easier.
cook?
Yes.
Who wants to cook? Like, I hate cooking for people. I'm a great one burner, two burner cook. I can whip out the dinner or the breakfast, whatever. But I hate that. That's why like I love the mountain guides. You go to the mountain guides. The only thing I hate more than cooking is shopping. You go into the pantry, you pull all your food, you throw it in a steamer, and you serve your people, and you're done. You know, like you're not touching the food or anything. Like I think it's really difficult to work all day for someone and then cook for them.
Yes. Yeah. And
You know,
it just
it's
seems
very
kind of
difficult.
really interesting that it's
And so, I mean, yeah, anyway, yeah, it's hard to find a balance. And like, I'm definitely stepping away from guiding. I've definitely retired from guiding in the Tetons, definitely retired from guiding, skiing. I'm still working on programs that are of great interest to me. And I bought some land at the City of Rocks, so I'm working on developing that. That's where I see my legacy in retirement years, is at the City of Rocks. And still being here in Moab, I'm definitely stepped away from managing the Moab branch. That's now a Desert Branch job, um, which includes Red Rock and Moab. And now I'm just working on like my pet projects, like the Women's Network and Protrack. And I've spent a lot of time down at Lake Powell, with the low water, exploring all the canyons, and looking at the regrowth and regeneration of those canyons with the low water. And my husband and I reconnected the ancient Ute Trail down
Yeah,
there last winter.
so Lake Power, so you meant those ones that they got flooded over when they have the dam? Those
Yes.
canyon. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that's called Glen Canyon.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes like Green River, Colorado River join at Island in the Sky at Canyonlands, and
Right.
that turns into Cataract Canyon, and then it gets dammed, and
Mm-hmm.
then that begins Bullfrog, which
Right.
now the water's so low at Bullfrog you can't even get your boat in there, and
Oh.
then Bullfrog goes into Glen Canyon, and then
Yes.
Glen Canyon is like, if you watch like Planet of the Apes or Charlton Heston, The Greatest Story Ever Told, that's all footage of Glen Canyon before it was dammed.
Yeah.
And then you go down, and then you go to Lake Powell, and then there's Glen Canyon Dam, and then Grand Canyon, and then Lake Mead, or Hoover Dam, and then Lake Mead. And I mean, I'm really lucky. I've done 9 Colorado trips, private trips, and then 2 of those trips have been solo with my husband. Like, we're big boaters. We have a cataract. We've been on ocean water, open water. Like, that is something that is a real love of mine. And I feel like old climbers, since we know how to tie knots and we're not afraid to climb a mast, we maybe get to retire as sailors,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I definitely have other interests that as I'm getting older, it's just really great to be able to expand and go out and explore these other areas I've been
Yeah, so
interested in.
so it seems like to you maybe like when you were like younger, when you just started, you more just put more priority on work, and then you find that you have to set boundaries and take care of yourself, and
Yeah,
then now you switch to some maybe more less of those overnighters with people.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
and
And I
then
have to say, oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, and I will ask you a
Well, I
question.
guess
Yeah.
what I'll do is I'll backtrack a little bit, because I guess I did leave out kind of a poignant piece of my climbing history. Is I did compete in the snowbird competition in
Yeah, I remember you. I saw
1989,
the
and
snowbird. Yeah, when that.
yeah, and it was the second one, and I kind of was just like, oh, whatever. I went down there with Rex Hong and Sam Leitner, and City of Rocks kind of got on the map because Snowbird was happening, and this international community was coming to Salt Lake, and so they would go to the city.
Okay, I
and
see.
and so like, I was like, okay, well, I'm not much of a competition climber or anything, but I'll go participate. So I participated in the semifinals. They let me in, like, Brooke Sandal with Metolius gave me a harness. Like, it was hilarious. So I show up, and we get there, and I always drew first. I don't know why I always drew first in those competitions, but I drew first, and then I was like, okay, well, that's it. Like, I met Lynn and Bobby, and I was so inspired by all those women. I was just like, like, you can really climb at a higher level. Like, that's really what my take home was from all of that. Like,
Definitely.
women can really climb at a higher level. And
Yes.
I was inspired to always then climb at a higher level, and to always work hard to climb the best I could climb for whatever my circumstances are around me. I was like, okay, the guys I was there didn't make the finals. And I'm like, well, there's no way I'm making the finals. And so we're all like planning to leave. And then the next thing you know, it comes up like, oh, I'm in the finals. I'm in the finals. That was hilarious. So, yeah. So anyway, I climbed in the finals and then was asked back to go to like a Berkeley World Cup or whatever. And I mean, I think I finished like fifth or something. And I was just like, this isn't really sustainable. Like, that's the way I
Yeah,
looked at.
back then, right?
Yeah, right. Like
Especially.
competition climbing. I can remember like going through Surfer magazine and going, okay, the absolute lowest paid surfer on the circuit makes $28,000 a year. There's no way the top paid climber is going to make $28,000 a year. And I was like, I'm such a capitalist. I got to go to work. Like, this is not a sustainable venue to go down. And plus, it was like, who wants to be indebted to sponsors and who wants to like talk about themselves? Like, I don't know. And I wasn't really that good of a climber anyway, so I wasn't going to make it. So it was like, yeah.
I
But that,
totally understand. I mean, even back then, Link Hill had to do like some TV like funny commercials and stuff to make a
right,
living, right?
right. Yeah, and I have had great opportunities. Like I was in some film with James Brolin called 911. It was a pilot. And like every once in a while, I'll get a residual check from the Screen Actors Guild for that pilot was played like somewhere, it was played somewhere in India or something. And you're like, huh, an $80 check, and we climbed on the Snowbird Wall. We worked with Earl Wiggins and Kevin Swigert on that project. And then, I mean, I've had other opportunities to work with film crews and stuff. Like I just did a project a couple years ago with BYU TV here in Moab with a survival show that they
It's like the
had.
reality stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, I've had some really good opportunities with that, but it's like, it's also like, I don't know. I just need more consistent work.
Definitely.
I like being consistent.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
And then you mentioned earlier about your pet project, the Protrack and the Women's Network. So I'm actually really curious about the Protrack. I'm feeling a regret that I didn't participate.
oh, I know we missed you. Yeah, I mean, really, the Protrack started, I bet, probably 10 years ago, where
So did you
right,
start it?
I started it, and really what it was very organic. I would call all my girlfriends, email my girlfriends, and I'd say, hey, I got these 3 campsites reserved at the City of Rocks this opening week of June. Let's all get together and go climbing before we all start guiding, and let's just hang out. And that's really how it started. It was
Right.
just like, okay, let's just get together. And then they'd be like, hey, my friend from Tahoe's showing up. Can she join? And so we just would always have like this really just great group of fun women. And then it would be like, oh yeah, I've got to work on the on the on the raise and lower drill. Who knows that? We would kind of like go off track and go, okay, you need to work on that. Well, let's do it. Or someone would say, hey, I'm a little curious about what you're doing here on this portion of the Grand Teton with short roping skills. So we would pick up and go do some short roping skills. And then we just would have like great fireside conversations and just actually like get to know each other so that when you're actually out in the field, you don't feel isolated from that person because sometimes women, I mean, not sometimes, it's a very real thing. There ends up being like, you know, a conflict with women or like head hitting or competition with women sometimes in the field. And it's like, we need to break down those barriers and like support each other and uplift each other and know that someone has your back. I mean, I feel like guiding in the Tetons between the 2 guide services that work there, between Exum and Jacksonville Mountain Guides, those guides all have each other's back. They're great relationships. But I think that we have to build really internal relationships as well. And we have to build relationships with women. I mean, that's the one thing I never felt like any female from the AMGA ever reached out to me for anything. And we've had women presidents.
Hmm.
Like if I were the president and a female of the AMGA, I would be contacting every female in the industry in,
Yeah,
in
that's
that,
what
in
I,
that group,
yes.
right? Like I would be trying to reach out to them. And so for me, this Protrack kind of grew into this program where the mountain guides was like, hey, Aimee, what do you need? Like, let's put it out there. Let's get some other people involved. And so we had members come from the AAC. Miranda Oakley showed up with Mountain Hardware. They're one of our partners. Like we've had just other women showing up from other guide services. And this last year, we had a psychiatrist come who's working on her SPI, and she worked with us with resilience, um, some resilience training. And really, it's just become this yearly pilgrimage out to the City of Rocks where we're all climbing. The mountain guides is supporting it by, funding all the food and paying for the camping. And we're all just trying to get together and learn more about each other and learn more about our craft and also really do what we all really love, which is hanging out at the base of a climb and watching someone climb and send the route and being there in the moment with people climbing. And I just this year we're kind of changing it up. We're not just inviting women; we're inviting men because I've come to this conclusion that as much as we need support as individuals, as women, and as it's just that as that user group, we all have to learn to work with each other. And I feel like if we're going to invite some of the men with the company to come, and I think I'm really curious how it's going to work out, but I think it's a really good idea because you can't get away from working with men as a woman. Like we have to know how to work with each other.
True.
And I hope that we can all learn from each other, have like some days where women are all going out together, men are going out together, and then we're mixing it up. But I also just want people to be able to be out in the field together and just go, I don't feel like I can't approach that person now because I've had these 4 days of climbing with them at the City of Rocks on the Protrack.
So,
I want people to be able to feel like they can garner support from each other.
you said the Protrack started around probably 10 years ago? It,
Well, it officially probably started 6 years ago with
okay.
actually we changed it up and really started having an open invite list. It wasn't just all my guide girlfriends
I,
coming out,
but like for,
but it
say,
was
the
started very organically.
so for the say the preliminary organic 4 years and then the more official in quote 6 years,
Yeah.
and those years are all for female guides, and then this year
Yes.
you
And then
might,
this year
yeah.
we're we're opening it up to some male guides. So, and they're excited. Like because they're always like, well, we want to do a bro track. And I'm like, yeah, we should do a bro track and a pro track.
And I'm curious. So I read an article on Mountain Hardware. So the title is "Sister of the Road," and so they actually have some quotes from you, and I have some questions. So here let's say you mentioned that unfortunately there's not a clear path charted for women within our guide structure that we have. So what do you mean by like a clear path? So what do you think that we can offer, say suppose, what the path should be for female guys to follow?
Well, I mean, women face different challenges and objectives than men. I mean, um, I I chose to be child free. I've never wanted children, but I have guide girlfriends who have children,
Definitely.
and you know, it's like how there's no there's no
Support, I would say.
manual. that's written. There's no manual that's written on how you become a guide and, a mother and still stay strong and manage your day to day and manage your risk. Um, so you're coming home to your family. I mean, there's, there's nothing. Yeah, there's really not a clear chart. And I don't feel that always women are that open and,
Mm,
um, and willing to share knowledge and help each other. Unfortunately, like, we're guides because we do have a level of competition in us, right? And I guess for me, it's like I just want to be able to share what I know, let people know that you can make a career out of this, and that we need to support each other. And however we do that, through just checking in with each other, and having a Zoom meeting wherever, or maybe you meet up at a restaurant somewhere in your town where you're guiding, or you get together for your Protrack, or that you feel that you belong at the guide training and you're not intimidated. Um, I just think that, there's probably not really a clear path set for men who have families and
right.
children as well. Like, it's, it's hard because we have to work for, it's hard to be an independent guide in America. It's not
Yes.
really set, our system's not set up that way through, through our federal and
Yeah, the
state
permit and
lands. And
everything.
so
Yes.
we have to work for, we have to work for guide services. And so, you have to work for a guide service who's really got your interest at heart. I mean, that's why I love the mountain guides. It's why I look at Exum and I look at, Pete Keen and his business up at Oregon mountain guides. Like, you see people who are really, you know, setting up guide services that they are trying to, you know, create a working environment that's sustainable for their employees, for their guides. Um, yeah,
So,
it's just, it's really not easy for anybody to be a guide.
right. I mean, I definitely think that the support group is important, and I'm very curious how this year is gonna turn out. Because invite male guys to participate in the Protrack, because I feel that a lot of time when women entering the guiding business, they always just say, "Oh, there's a lot of white male in already there," and then feel intimidated. But it's kind of nice to hear you said that sometimes it's probably the pressures from potentially from other women too, because the
Yeah. Yeah.
competitiveness.
Well, and I think that if women are in the guiding world and they're working alongside men and they're feeling intimidated by these this group, feeling intimidated by men, I think that men need to be made aware of what makes them intimidating, how they can soften their skills to be more approachable. I mean, look at the AMGA. Like, they teach us hard skills, right? We learn a
Yes.
lot of hard skills going through their program, but we don't learn business skills, and they really don't spend a lot of time on soft skills. And so I think if we can learn as an entire group how to have more compassion and how to look at someone and realize, like, oh, okay, this person doesn't think like this. Like, is this person an artist or is this person an engineer? How is this person actually, what's their thought process? Or, you know, we all see that, maybe someone has something going on in their personal life and we might want to pick up a few pieces for them. I think it's just about realizing that as a guide, you're not the only person there. And one thing I've learned through guiding is when I'm with a client, clients want to ask you about yourself and they want to say, oh, what about this? What about this? Oh, tell me about you. I always flip that conversation. My conversation
Mm-hmm.
flips to, oh, let's talk about you. Because really, there has to be a sense of humility to be able to engage people's trust.
True.
And
Yes.
I don't want to hear about me.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
mean,
hear about them.
you
And
mentioned
so
about
many times you go out with young guides and they're just like, me, enough about me. What do you think about me? And you're just like, wow, okay, let's figure out the client because this is the person we're trying to figure out here, right?
I mean, I
Like,
really liked
what makes
what you
this
just said. Yeah, because I found that one of the biggest challenge when I just start guiding is because I didn't grow up in the States. So I was really worried that I don't know how to have a conversation with my client. And that would be actually a very important soft skill to learn to, how to ask good questions so you can foster this relationship with your client, I think.
right? And then if you foster that relationship, you're going to have a client. Like that's what we're trying to do, right? Is build a client base. I mean, if you work for Knowles or Outward Bound, you go out on a 30-day trip, which those are getting shorter every year, but
Yeah, I
you
used
go
to
out
work
on,
for Nose, yes, so I know
and
about those
so,
trips.
yeah, right. So then those clients are gone. They're done. You don't probably ever hear from them again. Maybe you do, but we have people who want to be guided or want to learn skills. I mean, I think it's amazing when someone comes to me and I'm like, I'm so flattered that you hired me. And my goal is that you learn enough that you can go out and be on your own. And those people are out there and you take advantage of, teaching them what you can teach them and being a resource for them in the future if they want to text you for a question. And then there are people who are going to need a guide and they're not going to ever go out without a guide. And those are the people that are going to sustain your career. And those are the people you have to find. I mean, on March 17th, I have three of my ladies coming out from my original group from the 90s. They're all in their late 70s, turning 80, and they're all flying down to Moab. And we're going to be together for 3 days.
Wow.
And, I mean, it's like, okay, I get a new knee tomorrow when I fly home or, you know, everybody has their aches and pains, but I mean, those women have sustained my career. And, those are the people you need to find and foster.
Definitely. Yeah. So you mentioned about soft skills like business skills, like or how to communicate with your coworker, your clients, and what other soft skills you find that probably
I,
AAGA can put it in some more formal.
well, I find one thing that guides really, come to me quite a bit about. I mean, I have a lot of just conversations with guides, on all kinds of subjects, but, one thing I find is that guides don't really know how to ask for their compensation.
Oh,
So
okay.
say uh, I'm booking a trip over to Red Rock and I don't have any other bookings around that. And I'm going to get paid my day rate or my guest guide rate going through the mountain guides. But that doesn't include my gas over there. It doesn't include any of my lodging or any of my food. And it doesn't include my tip. And you have to be able to ask for that stuff right up front. And I think that that's a very difficult thing for all guides to do.
Yes, it's very hard for me
It's
too.
very hard. And I'll tell you, like, I have people constantly trying to talk me down on my day rate.
Oh,
And you're just like, oh, really? Well, I mean, you're a doctor. I know what you make. It's like, no, I'm not, that's the price. Like, you can go somewhere else. Like, you have to be able to tell people no. And I think the thing that guides really have a difficult time with and they just don't know how to lay out how to ask for it. And really what you have to do is basically create a form letter that if you're going out for that person and that's the only account you have, then they're going to have to pay for your expenses. And if you can build other trips up around that, well, then those expenses get dispersed. And I mean, I really, in Vegas, I make all my clients put me up in a hotel. I don't care if they buy me dinner, but pretty much I end up having dinner with them just because I'm at the same hotel with them. And I definitely put in there that my gas needs to be paid for along with a tip, a gratuity. And it's amazing that if you lay it out there and people have an understanding and there's no surprises, they'll either walk away from it or they'll take it. And if they're walking away from it, they're really not who you want as your client, in my opinion, especially if they're expected to drive over there. You know, it's not like, oh, I enjoy my job so much, I'm going to go lose money. Like,
I, I think that's a very good advice because a lot of newer guys is just like, oh, I just feel happy that I get paid to do what I like to do. But then you really have to treat this as a real job, which is a real job.
real job. It's a high risk job. There's thin
Mm-hmm.
margins, you know? I mean, anything like driving over the San Rafael Swell from Moab in a snowstorm
Definitely, it's
is far
dangerous.
more deadly than anything you do out on the rock with a rope, right?
Yes, definitely. And then kind of made me curious about like I know that during the Protrack you have campfire talks, and then I bet a lot of guys come to you with questions. What other frequently asked questions that you encounter?
The other one is just like permitting systems,
Okay.
and pay. Like, I mean, really, the permit systems are set up on federal Forest Service and BLM lands to, if you're working for a permitted guide service, you need to be working as an employee.
Right.
You
Yes. You need to
you're
have a
not an
W
independent
two. Yes.
contractor.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a W-2. And then also just like knowing the parameters of your permit. Um, you know, where are you supposed to guide? Like on the Grand Teton, we have date restrictions. Like we can guide the Owen Spalding
Yes.
up and the Owen Spalding route up until June 2nd. And then after June 2nd, we can't guide that route anymore.
Oh.
Because things open to the public, right? And that's more of a route that the public's going to take. So they
Right.
pull us off of there. But Exum still, it's in their permit that they can guide there. Um, like Baxter's Pinnacle, it gets shut down for raptor closures. So nobody guides there. It's the same with Indian Creek, all the raptor
Yes.
closures and stuff. And then, it's joined, the federal forces have joined with the tribes. And so now, um, everything has been restructured out there with what walls are open to guide on and what walls are shut down um, for raptors and falcons and stuff. So it's really like the big question I get is like, how do you know where your permit is? And like really every guide should have their permit on them along with their first aid card in case they get pulled over by a ranger. And I'm amazed how many guide services don't issue the permit to the the guide. So yeah, I mean, like people want to work within the parameters of their permit. They just need to be educated on what they are because there are ramifications, right? Like if you have a fatality and you're not working within your permit, well,
Oh.
then all
Yes.
of a sudden happens to your liability insurance, you're leaving yourself very open and vulnerable. So those are questions that I get. We've had really some great speakers come, like Nikki Smith came, and she was really inspiring and very helpful for all of us on how to deal with the trans community and what their needs are, and just like you know how she saw herself as a guide and where she was going on her path as a speaker and instructor. And I mean, we all just learned so much from her. And then, yeah, other things is harassment within the industry,
Mm.
harassment with coworkers, which is quite rare, but definitely male clients harassing female clients. We've had many
Wow. Okay.
cases, and yeah, and so we've had those conversations. I mean, back in the day, I would get in a car with a total stranger and drive them somewhere or go camp with them in a remote area. I would never do that today. I would never stick a female guide in with anybody. Like everybody drives their own car, which see, it's hard for me because it's like I want to save space at the trailhead, right?
Definitely. And
You know,
all this
right? Like,
environmental carpool
yeah,
and
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But really, it's just like, yeah, you can meet my guide or you can meet the guide at the Donley Canyon parking lot in your own car.
Mm.
And so just like those precautions on just keeping yourself safe, checking in, checking out, like basically having, a following of the guide in the field, knowing that where they're going to be, what car they're driving, what their license number is, when they're finished for the day that they've checked in, and then knowing what your protocol is if they're not checking back in. So, yeah, uh, we've definitely had a broad range of conversation.
I see. And and I'm curious, like I am assuming that typically you are the one to give out advice, but then during all these years, that
Mm,
what you learned that from all these conversations and other
well, I
people's
think
experience.
everybody has something to say at the Protrack, and we're there to listen, right? And so everybody is giving advice, whether you're the brand new guide who just started as the intern and now you're moving up through and you're guiding. Like everyone has something to say and at the Protrack, and we are learning from everyone. But I mean, I've got a lot of years under my belt. I've been in the outdoor industry. I've met a lot of people. I have a lot of contacts, and um, I've had phenomenal climbing partners. I mean, Rob Hess has been instrumental with me, Kirk Bachman, Eric Leidecker. I mean, I have a list of women who I've been influenced by. I mean, the first time I met Catherine Freer before she died on the Hummingbird Ridge, I had just finished up climbing Dream of Wild Turkeys and I was done. And she just plowed over me with a heavy backpack with Jack Tackle at like 4 in the afternoon in Vegas. And they went up and completed the thing and came down in the dark. And I was like, that's a badass. That woman is a badass. And I was, you know, really inspired by her. And then being in the sport climbing circuit, got to watch people perform like Bobby and Bensman and Robin Ertzhill and Lynn Hill. And I created friends from that era of my life who are still my friends today. And, having the home ec teacher who runs a river company, and watching her deal with her all male staff and getting fired early on. Like that's a character builder. And, I just feel like I've had so many great influences and even my clients, it's like these women who are coming out to be with me. Like one of them owns one of the major ski areas in the country. And these women are all thoughtful, educated. They're beautiful. I mean, it's like, wow, I want to be you when I'm 79 and 80, you know, I, you know, so yeah, there's a
Wow.
lot of inspiration out there.
Yeah, I think one of the most beautiful thing about guiding is you meet all sorts of people from all sorts of disciplines. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then they
Well, and I think
definitely.
too, like, I think I just highly respect like all the young women and men coming up through the ranks to guide. I mean, I really see like a level of seriousness with women who are getting their pins. Like, my good friend and climbing partner who I work with at Jackson Hole Mountain Guides, Lisa Van Skyver, like she's on the path to this pin and she is like a tremendous talent. Like Julia Niles is a good friend of mine. Meeting you, I mean, I think I hired you for the mountain guides. I was like, oh yeah, we have a job. You just got your thing. We got a job for you ding, ding, you want to work? There's work for women. And I just admire all the women who are in the industry, who are out there putting themselves out there every day, no matter what their home life situation is. And, they're trying to make it work for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's, it's really amazing. I mean, who would have ever thought? I never would have imagined I could be a guide ever. I
Yeah,
mean, even
I'm
my mother before she passed away, my 97-year-old mother before she passed away, she said, I just can't believe anyone would pay that kind of money to go out with you for the day. She's like, when we would go skiing, we would take the whole family for $100 for the day. And she's like, she couldn't even conceive that you would get a ski lesson or, you know, hire a
definitely.
guide. It's like I could have used a ski lesson when I was younger. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the industry is just growing,
Yeah, and
and
that kind of made me curious.
but
Like
not
you've been
without it.
in this industry for this long. Like what kind of changes? Like other than it's just growing and growing, what other changes you've seen is notable?
it it's growing, but I think like we're fostering new guides at a high rate. People are working on their pins. People are working on their disciplines. So we see that growing. We see the educational end of guiding growing. Um, we see guide services in play. I think what we're seeing that is different is we're seeing access issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're going to see, like, we are seeing access issues limited, like, especially here in Moab, where we have so much public land around us. We're right now fighting out towards the Goonie Bird and Gemini bridges. They're trying to shut down 325 square miles of off-road vehicle use, which, I mean, there's all kinds of outdoor recreation users. It's called multiple use for a reason. And so for me, I just don't like seeing one discipline being shut down because that sets a precedent for the rest of us to lose access. So I'm a firm believer in multiple use and people having access to their public lands. And so I think as guide services, everybody's a little more on edge on, are they going to lose a permitted area? And for what reasons are they going to lose that to? Are they going to lose it for bighorn sheep migration? Are they going to lose it because uh, they don't want recreational vehicles in that area? So then if the recreational vehicles aren't in that area, then how are you going to get to that tower that you want to climb to? Are you going to
Yes.
walk a 10-mile round trip? So it affects us all. So I think that's, to me, the biggest change is that, we have to be a little more on guard with access. And I know that the Mount AMGA has, I think his name is Matt, who's in
Yeah,
position, and
Matt
Jason Keith,
Wade. Yes.
Matt Wade and Jason Keith. Those guys are definitely doing their due diligence to keep access open for guides and guide services. So yeah, and that's how you have a voice, right? Through the Access Fund, through the AMGA, through the American Alpine Club. Those organizations help give climbers and guides a voice.
Definitely. And how about because early in the conversation you mentioned that back then the guiding is quite different because and then nowadays clients come out and they have because people train nowadays they have facilities so they have a clear goal. So how did you see the client base change? Like what kind of change did
That
you see with
transition.
the, yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, you always have to, I mean, we have a standard with the AMGA on what you need to be climbing as a guide, which I
Yes.
think it's 511 now. And I've always felt like I've always been inspired to climb 512, whether I'm climbing it or not. I'm always inspired to be on those harder routes to try to get those routes. I mean, when I was younger, I could onsite 512, but things change. And so I have to work for that and I have to train for that. And so I've always been a firm believer that you have to always be climbing over whatever level you're going to be guiding. And all of a sudden, I just remember being in the Red Rock and just going, wow, okay, like we've got this many multi pitches we're going to do in this many days. And then this person wants to jump on this 511 and they got it, like they got every pitch. And I was like, it's transforming. Things are changing. People are training. People are coming out strong. Mountain Project came on board. All of a sudden we have, you know, a crowd sharing resource on climbing routes, and
Definitely.
people have a photo at their fingertips. And so it just all came to fruition for me in the Red Rock. And I was like, all right, game on. Like, if you're not climbing at 511 on your own, you're not really guiding. And, you I mean, I'm definitely grateful that I've always just had a very willful head, and I've always been, you know, very driven, and I love climbing. I love movement, and I have my little tread wall, my ancient tread wall I train on. And, you have to be strong. Like, that's the
Definitely.
main thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to keep yourself strong. And movement is, in my opinion, everything. Like, being
Nice.
able to keep that movement going.
Yeah. So wow. So it seems like, I mean, I do train myself, but it seems like nowadays as a guy, you take care, take good care of yourself, train, and also you need to be business savvy too.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and you can't get injured. I mean, I've been really lucky. I've never had a knee injury. I've always been able to like kind of tape myself back together.
Yeah.
And,
So talking
God
about
forbid.
injury, do you? Yeah, you mentioned that the second time. So what do you look out for yourself to try to avoid getting injured?
Yeah. I mean, I train only, like, I have only huge holds on my tread wall jugs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't train on crimpers.
Right.
I did have a lot of tendonitis when I was younger, just on crimpy holds. And then, I mean, crack climbing's like, once you really get good at certain sizes and everything, it's like a stupid bar trick, right? You're just hanging off your bones. So crack climbing kind of saves you. The only thing that does for me that's not super positive is carrying all that gear at my age. I'm like, oh God, why couldn't I have been doing this when I was younger, hauling this huge rack? But yeah, I mean, it's really about just like keeping up with running and hiking and yoga. I never did yoga, and I do a lot of yoga now, which has really been good for me. And I never started running until I was 40.
Hmm.
And I started running at 40, and I was like, I love this. There's no backpack. You can go forever. And I didn't know I could run. And living in Moab, I have some of the best trails just right above my house. And so
Yes.
I just feel like, I'm not much of a bike rider, not much of a biker, even though I do ride my bike a little bit, but skiing and hiking, like all of that, just trying to do everything in moderation and keeping yourself hydrated. I mean, that's the hardest part for me, is trying to stay hydrated.
Yeah, especially
I
if you
just feel
live
like
in Moab, in a desert country.
right? You feel like you're evaporating,
I
right?
know. I in Red Rock, I always feel like I don't drink enough. So I can
Yeah.
totally
I'm
understand.
sure you don't.
Probably not. Yeah. Um,
Funny.
and let's talk a little bit about the women's network that you're doing. I just saw actually this morning. It's interesting. I just mountain guy just sent out to say, oh, we have this starting the women's crack climbing in Moab. So how
Well,
long? Mhm.
think for I think for me, like I I started the women's network. I don't know how many years ago, but we've always kind of done women's programs at the Mountain Guides. But we also at the Mountain Guides have branches now in Colorado. We have a branch in Moab. We have the Red Rock branch. We've got the Tetons. We have winter programs, skiing, avalanche courses in the Tetons. We have Red Rock. And so it's like, I started looking at our roster. I did this kind of women's history post for the mountain guides for the month of March a while back. And I started going through the history of all the women who have worked for the mountain guides. And I was like, damn, we've had a lot of women work for us. We've had Nancy Carson in there. We've had Sue Miller, Chris Ann Crysdale, Catherine Miller, Lynn Wolf. I mean, we've always had a history of women working for the mountain guides. And, and then Catherine Jackson, she was a great mentor of mine and one of the first women guides in the Tetons working for Exum. And I was like, why not just put together affordable clinics, courses throughout the year at these different locations, offer up the women we have working in these locations the opportunity to work with these women, and hopefully these are feeder programs that you can actually end up pulling clients from and progressing them into their next steps. And we have all of these locations. It's very unique to be able to try to get a course in any of those places at any given weekend throughout the season, get an avalanche course through the Women's Network. And really, I just wanted it to be an opportunity for women to be able to come out, take an affordable course, join in a network where they actually make friends, maybe a new climbing partner, meet a guide that they can have as a mentor. And then it's also an opportunity for guides. I mean, it's not the highest paying program that we offer, but it's also an opportunity for female guides to work on their craft with women and hopefully build a client base from that. Maybe you can pull a client from that who desires to go climb epinephrine, or they want to climb Crimson Chrysalis, and you can pull that person from that program and work with them on that. So that was my vision on it. And I mean, there's lots of women's programs happening out there. But yeah, and these are just day programs. You meet for the day. We're not really camping with each other, but definitely people all end up going to dinner together, it seems like. And yeah, it's just a program where women can connect and not feel like their pocketbook is getting broken over the whole thing. And then figure out, like, where are they with their climbing and how do they want to move forward? Are they someone who's going to need a guide, or do they have specific goals? Maybe they've realized, man, I think I'm ready to go take an SBI course. It's just, I just wanted it to be a program where women can work with women, they can support each other, they can uplift each other, and that that there are a network of women out there. I mean, when I started climbing, it was high noon if you saw another woman out climbing. It was all men. Now you go to the crag and the men are outnumbered.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there are definitely a lot more women climbing nowadays, outside, inside too.
And I remember one day I was climbing with Emma Madeira, and we went and we did Sister Superior. And I remember coming down and I was thinking, and we basically ruined my Honda Element driving it out there and getting it through the crux of the road to get to the base of the talus cone. And I remember thinking, damn, we just went and did all that, and we had not a single male influence for the day to get us where we were and to complete that thing in really good style. It was like, I was proud. I was like, I totally have the helm here, and women can do that. Like, we can do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've never been subject. I'm not a gym rat. I've never lived where there's really a gym other than the Teton Rock gym. And then I never ever went to the enclosure, but I've never been a gym climber. So I don't really know what goes on within the walls of a gym, because I've always been an outdoor climber. And it's like, I don't know. I've just never really felt any of the sexism or scrutiny that I think a lot of women feel. So I'm not really privy to that, but I do understand that it does happen. And I don't know. I'm really fortunate that I've I was raised outdoors. You know, I grew up with an outdoor lifestyle.
Yeah. You saying that you dial back a little bit of guiding work. So
Mm-hmm.
what's your future look like? For the at least next 5, 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I've got some things I'm working on with the mountain guides. So one is Protrack, one is launching the women's network, and I'm handing stuff over. I still have about 14 towers to climb for my 100 tower pursuit. I'm working on a development project with my husband here in Moab. I bought land back in 2002 here, and I subdivided it, and we're putting the two final structures on this little minor subdivision that we have. So it's kind of all hands on deck right now with that project. And then my husband has his business now that he's retired from being a pilot. Our goals are spending more time together since our lives have been really quite apart. Um, so climbing regularly, we definitely go down to Lake Powell. We climb in Arizona quite a bit. The Western Desert is all new and opening up to us of Utah. Moab is getting really crowded. I mean, I really feel like I've had quite a heyday here, and I'm definitely pushing out to other areas that are more remote and more chossy. And
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about your 100 tower project. So you say you
yeah,
still have 14 to go. But
yeah,
for me, I actually tried, I've done 40 towers myself, but I feel that once you hit a certain number, maybe 20 or 30, then you start to need to climb on charts.
totally right. Like after I was like at after 20, the summits all start to suck.
Right? So,
Right. So like I've gone back like a couple years ago, Kit Delorier, I didn't free the flower tower on the Bridger Jacks. And I was like, I really like don't want to count it unless you like really get the summit. Like
right.
I backed off the summit. It was so scary and chossy. And so she went back out there with me, and I got through the summit, and I was just like, yeah, these summits suck after a certain point. It's like you got to get it done on your first round or you're not coming back maybe. So yeah, so I'm trying to chart that path on what those towers are. We've had a challenging winter here. It's been super wet. Like we're at 222% of snowpack. We still have snow down to the valley floor on north aspects, and the rock's been wet. And we had our coldest temperature, I think, in 40 years this week
Yeah,
at
this winter
night.
in Red Rock is really bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, and plus we're working on this building project, but yeah, I mean, spring's coming, and everybody starts showing up to be your climbing partner again. So I'm just looking forward to moving forward this spring, and you know, I'm not as strong as I should be, so I need to get strong. And right now, I'm refurbishing a clawfoot tub that I'm restoring that I got because I'm building an outdoor bathroom for when guides show up and park on my property here to work. So they'll have an outdoor bathroom along with this stuff up front or up on our upper property, and then I'm working on my stuff at City of Rocks as well, and that's really where I see myself being in the future. I've got 8 acres out there that I'm going to go plant all my trees. I'm planting trees, saplings, getting the water in and the power in, just doing some basic infrastructure this season. But I really see myself spending more time up in Idaho, and triangulating between Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. And then hopefully things open up a little easier with travel. I mean, a lot of people are traveling, but um, we really enjoy diving, and we spend quite a bit of time in like Belize and Grand Cayman and the Caribbean. And so we're hoping to get back down there. But we really have like this focus project on this building that we're doing, and
I see.
kind of consumes your time.
Definitely. And you, I'm actually curious about the guiding scene in City of Rocks. Like for me, I know it's not too far from Salt Lake City, but for me, I don't go there that often because the driving for me is a little bit
Yeah,
long. The travel
it's
is long.
remote. It's
Yeah, it is
remote.
remote. So do people go there like because in Vegas people come. It's easy. So
Easy.
it is
Hotels.
right, definitely. So how's the City of Rock guiding scene? Is that enough?
Well, it's enough for me at this point in my career, by all means. But it's logistically, there's a lot of work with it. You know, like if you have to, everything's on a reservation system with the campsites. There is one hotel in town. There are some Airbnbs sprouting up. All your food needs to really be brought in. There's one restaurant that now just recently opened back up. The country store serves lunch, and you can actually have the ladies who own Tracy's Country Store do some catering for you. But for the most part, there's also some RV camps that have popped up right outside of the park, which I prefer to like use the RV parks that have popped up outside of the park for reservations for camping for guests, just because I have cell phone, and it's not easy for people. If you're traveling from New York, you fly into Salt Lake City and you Google how to get from Salt Lake City to the City of Rocks, it will put you on a myriad of back roads that will certainly blow your tire. So you have to constantly be managing your people as they're coming into you. And then it's a place where you have to spend a couple days. You know, you can't just come for the day. And it's a place where a guide has to travel to, right? So you
Yes.
have to build all of your work up around certain dates so that you can, you know, manage any of your expenses. So yeah. So, and then also it's a complicated system out there. Like you work with the City of Rocks with a permit. And then you also have to have a license through Idaho Guides and Outfitters, which is a complicated process in itself. So I pay like every year since 1985, I've paid anywhere from a rate of $75 to $125 to have a license to guide out there. And that licensing program started with the Idaho Guides and Outfitters for hunting guides and river guides. And then mountaineering, technical mountaineering, and skiing was put under there along with fly fishing. And so it's a very layered process. Like you have your AMGA credentials, you have your first aid credentials, you need your Idaho Guides and Outfitters license, and then you need to be a permit holder to work under a permit. So it's not the easiest place to work, and it's remote. Uh, um, I just feel really fortunate that my dream came true, that I was able to buy land out there, because that's been a lifelong dream of mine, and it happened in 2021. And now I'm working on getting my little homestead out there,
Nice. Yeah.
and being able to have guides and friends, and it's really my dream to have a place where everybody can come to and feel welcome as
Yeah,
guides and
definitely. I know City
climbers.
of Rocks is very special for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I just
and I have a history there for sure. I mean, even as a young child, my dad would drive us out there on a Sunday, and we would run all over those rocks, and that's when it was totally overgrazed by J.R. Simplot and all his cattle, and it wasn't a reserve or anything. And then we would go there in college and climb, and do community service projects like clean up fire pits and, stuff like that. So yeah. So that's really what I'm looking forward to, and spending a lot of time with my husband and all my climbing friends and ski buddies,
Nice.
doing more exploring down at Glen Canyon and Lake Powell.
Well, we've been talking. I'm taking out a lot of your time right now, but still, I'm wondering, say, if some people come to you and they just starting out, say a female guy just starting out, is still kind of nervous. What kind of advice or encouragement that you might give to them?
Well, I think it's important to find what your mission is. Like, how do you really see yourself as a guide? Do you see yourself as a career guide? Is it transitional, like we spoke about earlier? And then really just finding your voice, and really trying to connect with other women who guide, connect with your male friends who guide, go out and climb with all these people. Climbing, going out and climbing on your own, and being with your contemporaries and friends is so important. I mean, we can all just get pigeonholed into that whole guide routine. And, that becomes really mechanical. And I just think it's important to, you know, you have to put yourself out there. And that's really, really scary. And when you do that, you've got to be able to go through your day, and then you have to debrief yourself. I mean, I had some serious debriefing with myself when you get a bad review from absolutely every client in the women's ski camp. Like, you don't think that makes you go home and take pause and figure out how you're going to run your day? I mean, as much as that was hurtful, it was one of the best learning experiences I ever had, and growth experiences I ever had. So I think you have to be able to, like, not take yourself too seriously, but you also have to be able to critique yourself, and you have to be able, from the words of Lynn Wolf, did I really pull the day off, or did I just get away with it?
I
And
love
I
that.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's Linny speaking, and that will always resonate with me. I was able to guide under her when I started working in the Tetons. She showed me the ropes up there, and, you know, I'll just never forget it. It's like, yeah, did I really pull the day off in good style, or did I just get away with some stuff? And you have to be able to look at that, and you have to be able to speak up. I mean, I know I've always been someone who will kind of just like shy away and just go, oh, screw it. Like, I'm going to just go off here and like deal with my own scene. And I've always kind of been a little bit of an outsider. Like, I can't say that. I mean, I have great friends, but it's not like I'm just the person that rolls in and everybody's my buddy in the guide service, like, I'm not Doug Coombs, like Doug Coombs walks into a room and everybody feels like they're his friend. Like, I don't have uh, that kind of personality and charisma. But, so you have to work at things. Like, it's work. At the end of the day, guiding is work, but it's really beautiful, rewarding work. Like, it's unbelievable to me that you can sit up on top of a ledge anywhere in the Red Rock and bring someone up to you and watch the traffic go by, or be up on the Elephant's Perch and watch the biplane circle by every hour on its flight seeing tour. And that's your job, as all the like green swifts come up and fly next to you. Like, that's my job. It's amazing. It's really it's incredible. I can't believe people hire guides. I'm grateful for them, every one of them.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear you said that you just love this job. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
know a lot of people have doubts and fear, and I bet you probably have that from time to time.
Oh yeah, all the time, of course. But you have to just like get up. I'm like, I've been working on some stuff about how I was raised and how I grew up, and trying to figure out where I got this drive that I have. And when I was a small child, my father took me fishing quite a bit. And he took me fishing at this lake in Idaho, Twin Lakes, and put me in some hip waders. I mean, I was 5 or 6. I was little. Said, "Oh, there's a bass out there. You just fish this hole. You're going to be fine. I'll be back." So he put me in these waders. I'm out fishing this hole, and like this horrible storm comes in. And like I get out of the water, all I've been doing is tangling my line in the snags around me. So I just pulled out of the water, sat back, and I watched people in panic coming in with their boats. Like really a sense of panic was coming in. Lightning, the wake increased. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, I know he said he was coming back here, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. Well, I don't know how long I waited. I'm little, right? So how does time pass? And then all of a sudden my dad comes ripping up in the station wagon in a pure panic. And he had been driving on the highway home and looked over and saw my shoes on the passenger side of the car and went, "Oh my God, I left my kid back there fishing in a huge storm." He came back and he got me. And he took me out for a burger and a milkshake on the way home. And like it was the best burger and the best milkshake I ever had. But more than anything, it was like I had time with my dad that I wasn't sharing with my 7 sisters. And we never talked about it. Like that was like the thing. We just never talked about it until later in life. And then I realized like he also would take me out fishing in the Beckler Meadows, which is high bear territory, and he would just leave me. And I wouldn't even fish. I would just be on guard. I would be like, "Oh my God, like I'm not fishing because this is bear territory. Like I could get eaten by a bear." And it was really unnerving. And I think those experiences with my dad, just being a hardworking man and supporting 8 kids, and his wife goes back to college to, to work on her art degree. Like my dad busted his ass and he was a outdoorsman. All he wanted to do is fish and ski and hunt birds. And I never thought it was a problem, but I realized like he instilled in me that I needed to share knowledge and help people stay safe. I'm like, I think those childhood incidences kind of set the foundation for me to be a guide. So that's all kind of funny. But definitely his enjoyment of the outdoors and working hard and exploding into the outdoor after your work week is definitely something that became infectious with me. And yeah, anyway, that's kind of a funny little story.
That's funny, and in the meantime, it's also beautiful too. I'm glad that you survived.
Right. Oh, funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time, and anything you think you still want to say to our listeners, or just go out and enjoy the day.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get my tub finished before the next snowstorm comes in.
Ooh.
We're expecting storm on Wednesday, so
it's going to snow again too. Wednesday here too. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, this winter has been really cold.
Yeah. It has been. I moved out of Jackson, so I didn't have to do 10 degrees.
But now you do. But hopefully just for this winter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, thanks, Ting Ting.
Yeah,
so good to see you again. I guess I haven't done a podcast or webinar with you since 57 hours.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I love the thing. I love the conversation.
Been a while.
And thank you for all the wisdom that you share with us.